Welcome to Her Incredible Mind, where we are highlighting some of the most successful women in science, technology, engineering, and math. These women are inspirational leaders, showing resilience in the face of adversity. By sharing these success stories, we hope to gain insight, inspire, and help guide those who are struggling on their journey within this industry. Hopefully, their stories will inspire you or someone you know to pursue a career in STEAM.
So today we're with Gayle Pascucci, who is a Senior Director of IT. Gayle, can you tell us a little bit about your role today?
Sure. Thanks for having me, for one, and I'm excited to be here. I'm excited about this opportunity, and I just think that the whole initiative that Kate and her team are doing is just awesome. And I have a daughter who's 13, so it's obviously even more near and dear to my heart for that reason.
Well, thank you for those kind words. That's very nice of you to say. That means a lot to us. So thank you.
So my role at the moment had morphed, but what I'm doing right now, and I've been in IT for over 20 years, and the company that I'm currently at, I joined in order to help them solve some of their reporting and analytics problems. So that was something that I started with there, and it morphed into doing mergers and acquisitions. So taking companies that the parent company purchased and adding all of the layers of IT and all those complexities into the new company and to bring them into the parent company's fold.
Awesome. M&A is an interesting a project in IT. I have done it so many times and I still love it. It's so complex, and it's actually one of those almost like a puzzle that you need to put together. It's a neat project to work on.
Yeah, the puzzle is a good way to put it.
So when you think about kind of what you're doing now, how did you decide on this role?
So it's kind of interesting when what I have done over the years, I've spent a lot of time doing software projects for companies. So when I first fell into IT, I was working on a timekeeping system, and things just sort of morphed over the years into just various software projects. So I've always loved software, right? I love working on software and working with teams who are implementing the software and whatnot. And so when I came into the company that I'm in now, that's where I started with, right, working with some software that they had, and they asked me, they said, Gayle, we have mergers and acquisitions that we need help on, and we could really use your skill set, and not necessarily the software piece, but just my ability to drive projects to completion. They said we could really use your help in this space. And what was different in the company that I'm at now and versus some of the other ones is the CIO recognized that my ability to drive a project home would help her, even though I wasn't an expert in M&A. I knew that was an area of IT that would be good for me to learn. So I said, yes, I don't know this. I don't know a lot about IT infrastructure at the moment, but I will learn and I will apply my other skill set, of driving projects and understanding resourcing and timing and all that good stuff. I will employ that for you. And I think together, we'll get it to work. And it did. We, had some great successes.
That's a tremendous example of someone obviously who was just supportive of you, right? And actually said, you know what, this person can do this role. And even if you didn't have that specific skill set, you were still able to rise to that challenge and say, you know what, there's an ingredient in that skill set that I have and that I excel at, and know that I can apply that to this particular project. It's something where I think some people will pigeonhole themselves and say, well, I don't have that skill because I didn't have every ingredient in the perceived recipe, that that you don't feel like you can do the job when you probably have more than enough to bring to the table. I'm sure in your career you've had those times where you've had more than what you thought, the role actually required.
Absolutely. And I love the term ingredient in this, right? I think this type of job, it's not baking, right? So it's not an exact science that if you get the wrong amount of baking soda, the whole cake is flat. It's cooking, right? And it's like, well, I don't have, turmeric, but I've got cumin, and maybe that'll be okay, or right?
Right. Right. So how did you decide on this role today? What brought you to it?
To IT overall, or specifically to IT
To IT
overall?
overall.
Yeah. So, okay. It's funny. So my undergraduate degree is business administration. So at that point in my life, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I knew I wouldn't be a good accountant. And, I knew at the time there weren't a lot of IT choices for undergraduate degrees. And so I started my very first job. I was working in a payroll department at a clinical research company, and I liked, I got a hold of the system really easily, and I liked understanding how the timekeeping system, what was important to pull from that, and what the payroll system needed from the timekeeping system. So that sort of came naturally to me. So then when an opportunity opened up, they said, Gayle, do you want to go support the timekeeping system? I was like, okay, sure. Right. And that was literally my jump into IT. From payroll, I suppose I could have gone various ways, but it just sort of happened. But I think it was because I found it interesting and I liked it. And that's what I think the trigger for me is knowing what I was interested in and liked, and then making that jump towards it.
It's interesting that you have a theme of kind of just finding something that you're interested in and really pursuing that. That's kind of how I fell into my career as well. I didn't want to do IT. That's not what I set out to do. But it's something that I just started to gravitate towards. I liked, certain parts of IT. I loved figuring out things. I loved trying to do things creatively. I feel like there's a lot of creativity in IT that people don't always credit the IT team for, and especially where, in your problem solving and you're trying to help people and you're trying to make the workplace better by adding technology that can help people's job be easier, or by learning a new skill within a platform that can transform how the company is more efficient. I see that a lot in M&A as well, is that you see that kind of not only that like for like, if you will, taking one flavor and then just taking that same flavor and add it across the board. A lot of times in M&A, you're making those decisions about, operationally, are we doing the right thing? Are we efficient? Are we, is this going to be what benefits the company the most?
Absolutely. Yeah. I like the way that you framed that. Because it really is, it's all about driving efficiency here in IT, right? And that's, the companies that have the best IT departments are the ones that use their IT departments to differentiate themselves from their competition and make them better. Yeah.
Exactly. So every role has its challenges, right? Especially within IT and within M&A and IT. But what do you enjoy most about your role?
What I enjoy the most about this role is watching teams of people really enjoy their work. So, for example, a development team that, is able to fully utilize their skill set as well as learn something new. So every day when they get out of bed, they look forward to working on whatever it is they're tasked with, as well as collaborating with their team members. So for me, some of the most fun I have at work are my team meetings.
Yeah, that's the best part. When you build a great team, you never want that to end. It's like having that, kind of group at work that you feel like, what, we all are working together on this. It's a collaborative and nurturing experience for everyone, and people are learning and people are moving in the right direction. And as a result of that, we're infusers that are actually, infusing the rest of the work environment with that positivity. So it's nice to see that, when you're rolling out or using, technology in a certain way and changing people's lives in the workplace. It's tough. So in your industry, obviously you've done a lot, from a program management, project management standpoint. Do you feel that the role has been different in different industries that you've been in?
Not hugely. I would say that because in my role, I've been in the IT supporting type areas. So for example, working in the insurance industry, right? So I was working on the foundational applications for them. So for example, document management, right? So a document management system is the same as a document management system potentially, right? Or relatively the same as, in life sciences. Obviously there are nuances and stuff, but when you have to implement those sort of foundational or supporting applications in a company, it's not, the difference between industry is not great enough that you can't leapfrog from one place to another. So for me personally, because that's been the area that I ended up in the most, in financial systems and HR systems and the data analytics, those areas don't differ in my experience largely. So I would say that, that in that area, but I could see how it would be different. For example, I don't have a lot of clinical data management experience. So for me to get into a pharmaceutical company that's looking for that particular experience, I've had a hard time breaking down, getting in that door because I don't have specific clinical experience. That makes sense?
Yes, it does. It makes perfect sense. It's some industries, I believe, you can do the same role across, multiple verticals, right? I think that when you start talking about specific areas, like you're talking about, like clinical, or, if it's, say automative, technology or whatever you want to say, with the automotive industry, you will see something different in those areas, because I also think there's different governing bodies for those areas. So it tends to change the way that we approach projects because of that. I think that's a big industry change. If you had to think about a obstacle that you have overcome in your career, or even still have, what do you think that obstacle would be?
So one that I would say that I have overcome it on occasion, but still run into it. So it's not once you're over it sort of thing. And I think that's actually kind of an important aspect to consider, right? So you're going to have obstacles everywhere you go. And just because you overcame it at the last organization doesn't mean you're not going to run into the same exact obstacle. In my experience, it's been, minus that one time that I mentioned earlier, it's if I didn't have the exact experience that they thought, the job required, I was not necessarily considered for it. And like I said, I overcame that to a certain extent because I had the right support around me to, in my current position, to do something that I had never done before. And the person who hired me to do it literally said, Gayle, I think you'll be fine, even though I know you don't have a lot of infrastructure experience. But in other organizations, that hasn't been the case. I've had to try and find people to support me to say, hey, listen, right, all these people believe that I can do it. I know I can do it. So it's something that I feel like I have to keep, it's an obstacle that keeps popping up that I have to keep trying to overcome.
Yeah, that's a great point about the fact that when you're trying to get a job versus when you're in the role, when you're trying to get the job and you don't have the specific experience, I feel I'm completely aligned with you on the approach that some people sometimes have with that. And I understand it too. You know what I mean? You're still meeting somebody net new. You don't have that full blown, kind of, background on how they work, what they do, everything about it. But at the same time, I feel like there are people that just exude that can-do attitude. And I think that that's a lot of, the equation for me when I've been hiring. I look at people and think, you know what? Yeah, they may not be a subject matter expert, but they're going to be. And because I can see in them the desire to learn, or the desire to change the way that I am even doing something, right? They could look at me and say, that makes absolutely no sense. Why are we doing it that way? And there may be a perfectly good reason for it, but I like the person that questions it. I like the person that says, you know what, we don't have to do it that way because we've always done it that way. It's an interesting thing in generationally. I see a lot with the younger girls that I interview. They're much different in their approach to how they try to work on problems and issues. And they also are okay with, saying, you know what, I'm not really interested in that part of it, so I'm good. So that's something that I think I see a lot, is that there's a change too in the attitude about whether, they want to pursue certain parts of it or they don't. That's definitely something I see a lot. And speaking of that, so what would your advice to younger girls be?
Couple of things, actually. So I thought about this question a little bit, right? I wanted to say something that, that I didn't think of, tomorrow, like, oh, I should have said, blah, blah, blah. So one of the things that I wanted to say was, I feel like you need a little bit of a tough skin. I think that that's important. And I think it's important so that you don't take so much personally, and so that you don't take things home with you, right? So understanding your own ability to, kind of let things roll off, right? Water off a dock, right? Take the things personally that you need to, but try not to let it be more than you should, would be one thing. Another thing that I wanted to bring up was I was talking to a guy that works for me earlier today, and he was telling me a story about how he had to write a document. He hates writing documentation. He's a true IT guy, likes to just get in there and get his hands dirty. Don't ask him, just, let him do the work, right? So he had to write a document. He was struggling with, do I write the whole thing step by step? Or, he said, because nobody ever reads the whole document. And he said, I learned my lesson when I was 6 years old. A teacher put an assignment in front of me and I did the whole thing. And the very last, problem at the bottom of the page was, don't do any of the work, just write your name and pass in the paper. And he thought, oh, I did all that work for nothing, right? If I had just read the whole thing, I would have seen. So I thought, oh, that's brilliant. That's such a great lesson for everybody, is understand your end game as much as you can, so that the steps that you take along the way are going to be more efficient, and you're going to have a better understanding of why you're doing steps 1, 2, 3, and 4 before you get to 10, right? And in that, I think you'll have more confidence about what you need to do to get to all the way to step 10, as much as you can, obviously.
Right.
And then one of the last things that I wanted to say for all of those young women out there, including my own daughter, is understanding your weaknesses and your strengths, and looking for things that play to your strengths, but also may help you develop your areas of weakness. Not, versus like, oh, I have this weakness, like I'm going to spend all my energy trying to get better at this one thing because it's a weakness. I think that, me personally, I think that you should spend a little bit more energy on your strengths and continuing to make them stronger. And in doing so, try to bring your weaknesses along with you, right? Instead of spending so much time on like the bad part of me, I'm going to develop the good parts.
Yeah, I think that is excellent advice. And I think that women tend to dwell on the things that are not what are something that we want to improve all the time. And I think that I see that now with young girls, especially, that they dwell on it. And I'm sure that social media and the amount of social media that they're on all the time is not great for that. There's a hard difference between what the reality is on social media versus what reality really is. So that was really well said. Thank you for that. I do appreciate it. So in your LinkedIn profile, if you had to limit it to 3 words to describe you, what would you pick?
I thought about this one too. I wanted to make sure I wasn't like totally off the top of my head. An effective collaborative leader are the 3 words that I would want to put on there.
That is great, and that's just the adjectives that you bring out in this interview. So I really appreciate you being here, and